It's one of those stories that stops you in your tracks. An entire family of 4, including 2 infants, gone. And while the kind of crime scene discovered in Arlington this week is rare, it happens often enough that a term has been coined to describe it: family annihilation, when a member of a family kills everyone else and usually takes his own life. A recent study finds the #1 trigger is a family on the brink of breaking up. And according to reports, that's exactly what was going on in the Jones household. It has happened a number of times in our own backyard: family annihilation. This week, authorities say 43-year-old Scott Jones strangled his wife May, then slashed the throats of their 1-year-old twin sons. Just days earlier, May had posted on her Facebook page that she would soon be a single mother.
You just don't know. You don't know what's going on behind people's doors.
In June of 2010, a similar crime occurred. Thomas Mortimer of Winchester killed his wife, 2 children, and mother-in-law. Mortimer admits he flew into a rage after his wife confronted him about a check he wrote to the IRS that bounced. While family breakup is the #1 cause of family annihilation, according to a British study, money woes are the second most frequent issue. The study goes on to say most perpetrators are men, usually in their 30s, and often attempt to kill themselves or do so in the aftermath. And unlike other murderers, the study says, family annihilators are not known to the criminal justice system and were generally considered to be loving husbands and good fathers. My first guest, Robert Mendoza, is a forensic psychologist and a partner at Boston Forensic Associates. Welcome, Robert.
Nice to be here.
I actually didn't know until I started researching this that there was a term for this, because it's different from, it's very distinct from domestic violence. And that fact being that they usually don't have a record of domestic violence.
Right. In fact, I think when we look at this term family annihilation, most overwhelmingly it's the men. Women, when they take the lives of other people in the household, that can happen. But when it's annihilation, the family is gone, usually the perpetrator, the male, it's usually a man. And I think what we're finding out more and more about these individuals is that there is a bit of a trail that they leave behind, but not in the criminal justice system. Typically in areas like counseling or past mental health, usually depression, mood disorders, and so on. This is the one kind of thing that we can actually start to put together the pieces. The problem is, who's responsible for putting this mosaic together? This gentleman was seen in 2010 by Mass General for an evaluation following a suicide attempt, arguably an outstanding institution. I'm sure they did their due diligence in the evaluation, but they probably didn't have every data point accessible. When something like this happens, post hoc analysis, we can go back and look at all the data, and we see a mosaic emerge that's clearly pretty evident. Substance use, family breakup, loss of family, loss of children, and here's the big one, loss of self-esteem. It builds up over a long period of time. It attacks their self-esteem. He had a job that made him feel good about himself, but it wasn't enough. And in the end, annihilation probably is a good way to describe what happened in those last few moments.
There's also there's oftentimes sort of a paranoia or a perceived threat to the family. And maybe you know more about this than I do, but in some ways these people feel like they're protecting the family. Well, I'm going to protect them from this threat by doing this.
Protecting, it's sort of a selfish protection. It's that idea that I can protect them and I will take care of them by doing this. But there's a recognition, though, that they're also protecting themselves and how they feel about themselves. Usually there's a lot of self-image, a lot of damage to that self-image. They try to pump themselves up in any other way. When that's not enough, they then return to the most vulnerable people that they can take advantage of. And in this case, it's the family members. And you know, make no doubt about it, this is a very selfish thing to do, but it's an overwhelming thing that they almost feel is unsurmountable. It's the only option that they feel they have left. It's really a very sad thing.
So family breakup, financial woes, and according to this British study...
Well, there's substance use.
Obsessive behavior, mental illness. That was the third one. So he was exhibiting some form of obsessive behavior, you know, frantically raking the lawn and planting flowers and then digging them up and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I heard one of the neighbors describe that he was cleaning, vacuuming the sidewalk a lot and so on. That in and of itself, I don't know whether that contributes to the clinical picture as much as what is a very clear history of depression. He was in a coma following one of his attempts. He was using drugs in combination with a mood disorder. This was a person that was clearly on the brink and quite mentally ill in terms of the depression. The problem is, again, who's responsible for aligning up all these pieces of data and then saying we need to do something about this individual? It's very hard to do. In a post hoc analysis, you can always look back and say, here's all this data. But it's still not an event that occurs so much so that we know that much about how to prevent it. As opposed to, for instance, suicide. Suicide happens every 14 minutes in the United States. Over 38,000 suicides a year. That's a behavior we know a lot about, and we've done a lot to actually help reduce a little bit here and there amongst certain populations. Family annihilation doesn't occur sufficiently to really know what we can do to stop it, except maybe getting some help for the mental illness. That would have been a big thing. They tried.
Yeah, it sounds like they did.
But it obviously wasn't enough.